The strange woman who followed me as a child reappeared years later in my life. Today, I turned 18, but this story happened when I was about 10 to 11 years old, back in 6th grade. To give some context, I've lived my whole life in the same small town dirt village, and I attended school there from kindergarten through middle school. When I started 6th grade, my parents allowed me to walk to school by myself because it was only a 5 to 10 minute walk from our house. I was very proud and made this trip every day on my own. During the first few weeks, I noticed a woman standing every day across the street from where I walked. She always wore the same dark green sweater and somewhat dirty pants, standing still by a building near an intersection, watching me as I passed by. Initially, I didn't pay much attention and just continued my walk. One day I asked my friends at school if they knew who she was. They said no, but they had also seen her standing there several times, and one friend even mentioned that this woman had followed her home once. After hearing that, I started feeling very uncomfortable passing by her because I clearly sensed she was watching me. I decided to slightly alter my route to school, which was longer but let me stay out of her sight more quickly. Taking this new path, I felt safer and gradually forgot about her, until one day, just before turning onto my new route, I saw her again. However, this time she wasn't in her usual spot. Instead, she was standing on the other side of the intersection, much closer to my new path. Since she had never moved before, I became very frightened. I hurried down my path, and soon after I started walking, I heard footsteps behind me. Initially, I assumed it was another student, but when I turned around, I realized it was the woman, about 10 meters behind me. I panicked, quickened my pace, and rushed to the school gates. Once safely inside the school, I felt relieved, knowing she couldn't follow me further. I saw her standing outside, staring at me before finally walking away. Thinking it was over, I waited for my friends in the school lobby. After a few minutes, however, I was shocked to see her again, this time at the school's front office area, where parents are allowed in. I panicked even more, thinking, what is she doing here? They won't let her in, right? She pointed towards me while speaking with the receptionist, but thankfully left shortly afterward. I was terrified, told my friends, and they were scared too. After this incident, I refused to walk alone, and my parents started driving me to school. The following year, when I entered 7th grade, that strange woman had disappeared, and I didn't see her again throughout middle school. But last year, when I was a senior in high school in a nearby town, I casually told this story to a friend who was younger than me but attended the same middle school. Calmly, she informed me that she had recently seen this woman around the laundromat in our neighboring town. Of course, I wished I hadn't heard that. Later, while driving with my dad, we passed by the laundromat, and sure enough, there she was. It had been years since I'd last seen her, and I definitely didn't want to see her again. Thankfully, that's the end of the story. I haven't seen her since, which is great because as a kid, she really scared me. This is the only truly creepy story I've experienced, and I thought I'd share it here. Be careful jogging late at night. This is a true story, and even today, I still get chills thinking about it. I was 19 years old, and it was autumn in Quebec, Canada. At that time, I lived in a very quiet neighborhood where nothing bad ever seemed to happen. I loved jogging late at night, enjoying the cool autumn air and the near-total silence of deserted streets. It had become my personal routine, putting on my headphones, starting my playlist, and relishing the feeling of being completely alone in the world. One evening, around 9 p.m. as usual, I went out for my run. It was particularly dark that night, street lamps dimly illuminating the wet sidewalks, with a cold wind gently rustling fallen leaves. I had barely covered a few meters, setting up my running app on my phone, when suddenly a dark figure appeared at the end of the street. It was a tall man, his face concealed by a hood, walking slowly towards me. Initially, I paid little attention, thinking he was just another passerby. As we passed each other, he didn't look at me, silently walking by. But just moments after we passed, an unsettling feeling washed over me. Something was wrong. I instinctively turned around and my heart froze. The man was standing motionless, a few meters behind me, directly beneath a street lamp that cast eerie shadows on his face. He stared intently at me without moving or speaking. His piercing gaze seemed to penetrate deep inside me. I was paralyzed with fear. Then, As if sensing my terror, he slowly began to move, but in a completely unnatural way. He walked backward, never breaking eye contact, as though possessed by an unseen force. Each backward step amplified my dread. Unable to think clearly, one thought screamed in my mind: he must not know where I live. Unable to return home without passing him again, I decided to run in the opposite direction, this time without looking back. My heart raced as I tried to control my panicked breathing. After about 20 minutes, exhausted and anxious, I finally dared to glance back. No one was there. Relieved, I took a wide detour, carefully making my way back home, nervously checking every corner, afraid of seeing him again. This experience taught me a crucial lesson about caution. We often think nothing bad can happen to us, but since then, I've been more alert, especially when jogging late in the evening. Night of terror at the Airbnb cabin.
My name is Lexi. To this day, I still don't know exactly what happened that night, but I'd like to share my story. I was 13 years old when it happened. In February 2022, my parents decided to rent an isolated cabin for one night. The roads were covered in snow, and there was nothing around us, just fields and an old abandoned barn. The nearest town was 30 minutes away by car, at the end of a winding mountain road. After a long, exhausting drive, we finally arrived at the cabin. My father had booked it through an Airbnb-like app, without paying much attention to the listing details. We were greeted by a tall man in his 60s with an Austrian accent. He mentioned he used to be a musician. The tour began. The cabin was huge, spanning 3 floors, but something felt off from the very start. The front door was broken. There simply wasn't one. Instead, there was a large, sliding glass door leading directly inside. That's how the owner had us enter. Right in front, in the hallway, there was an old, broken bathtub sitting in the middle of the floor. Noticing our confused expressions, the man smiled and said,
"Don't worry, it's under renovation. Besides, it's a quiet area."
Too tired to dwell on these oddities, we continued the tour. The interior was strange. The kitchen and living room were spacious but neglected, as if no one really cared for them. Then he showed us the bedrooms, an important detail for later. There were 2 rooms, one for my parents and one for my brother and me, separated by the bathroom. My parents' bedroom had a large, wooden, sliding door that locked. Ours, however, had no lock at all. The owner's room was directly below mine, at the foot of the wooden staircase. Before leaving, he explained he had to go out for work and would return late at night. He left us his number in case we needed anything. At 13, I was quite solitary, though close to my older brother. After the owner left, curiosity drove me to explore the house. Our room had belonged to the owner's children and was decorated for a newborn, full of toys and stuffed animals. It was unsettling, but as long as there was a bed, we didn't complain. My parents' room, however, was even stranger. There was an old desk, an ancient TV, shelves packed with hundreds of DVDs, but most bizarrely, dozens of post-it notes stuck everywhere. Each note labelled the object it was attached to: chair, wall, floor. My father laughed it off as quirky, but it made me anxious. There was no internet, no mobile signal, not even a way to call for help. As evening came, I went to the kitchen. It was decorated with puppets, dolls, and musical instruments. The atmosphere felt heavy. Then, something strange caught my attention. 3 cats were grouped outside the sliding glass door, meowing and scratching desperately at the glass as if trying to get inside. Initially, this made me smile because I loved animals. But the more I watched, the more their behaviour seemed abnormal, as if they were trying to warn us. I had a bad feeling. The owner also had a cat, a ginger one, that followed us around the house, as if guarding us. Before going to sleep, our mother advised us to block our bedroom door with a chair, just as a precaution. 2 a.m. I woke up sweating. My heart was pounding, my body paralyzed. I was familiar with sleep paralysis, but this time felt different. Something had woken me. Screams. Under the door, the hallway light was on. It activated automatically. Someone was behind the door. Then I heard a voice, a woman's voice, speaking loudly, almost shouting. I couldn't understand the words, but it sounded like German. I thought of 3 things. Anyone could enter since the front door didn't exist. My bedroom door didn't lock. If the danger was real, I was going to die. The woman occasionally stopped speaking. Unbearable silence followed, as if she were listening. Then she resumed, but this time her voice changed. Now it was a man's voice, yet it was clearly the same person. Suddenly there were sounds of objects smashing downstairs. Plates, bottles, someone destroying everything. I tried to wake my brother. Nothing. He slept deeply. I shook him once, twice. Still nothing. Desperate, I slapped him. He opened his eyes just as a loud crash echoed beneath us. The owner's cat was scratching and meowing frantically at our door. "Call the police," I whispered through tears. He grabbed his phone. No signal. The voice was getting closer, murmuring, scratching at the walls. After 20 minutes of silence, someone knocked at our door. Then we heard our mother's voice. "Come." I've never run faster in my life. We immediately left the cabin. A month later, I mentioned that night during a family dinner. My mother turned pale, but nothing happened that night. Forget about it. Only a year later did my parents admit they'd heard everything. They saw the owner returning at 1 a.m. from their window. That woman's voice might have been his. Moral: never book without doing research. And always, always lock your doors.